All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and today I am back with another video here. Today I have a very special guest with me, Jim from High and Wide, Angry Jim, as some people would, would like to call him. Jim, how you doing, man? Thanks for doing this. Appreciate you coming on.
Doing good. Yeah, formerly Angry Jim. I think he's maybe needs to make a return with the way things have been this past season. I'm surprised he hasn't been back yet. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris. Always excited to hang out, and yeah, looking forward to getting into some Flyers talk.
Yeah, for sure. Right now, as I'm attempting to tweet this out, there's obviously been a lot of different things that have come out in the past couple of weeks, I guess, with the Flyers coaching situation and Barry Trotz. I guess we could start there. Obviously Trotz is the main candidate, and obviously he's the main candidate for the Flyers. That's obviously what you'd like to think. But we've heard different rumors of the Flyers not necessarily taking this as like if they lose out on a candidate, they're kind of okay with it. They want to make sure it's the perfect guy. And we've, as the two of us have kind of, I know that me and you have talked about this before too, like the way that they need to hit on this coach and they need to hit on the hire. If they're able to do that, and if obviously they have to take as much time as they want, and it's going to take some time as well. But if Trotz isn't the option, and there was a rumor actually last night that he was signing in Winnipeg and was going to go there, and that kind of got vetoed a little bit by Elliot Freeman on the latest 32 Thoughts podcast. But if Trotz isn't available, Jim, who are some of the other guys that you would kind of want? Obviously, Jim Montgomery's out there, Rick Tocchet. We've heard David Quinn. There's so many different guys.
So it's funny because it's just funny how things change, and I can kind of relate this to how the Flyers coaching search or lack thereof, or whatever you want to call it, is going. But things change over time. When the Flyers during the season, I think we're all rah-rahing, let's get Tocchet in here. The team needs a guy like Tortorella. And when the dust kind of settles a little bit and you actually look at the way things are, and I know everyone's hung up on aggressive retool and, Dave Scott's still here and Chuck Fletcher may not know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. All emotion aside, right? All the, everyone's fired up. The highs and lows are gone. You can make decisions clear-headed. What does this team need? Well, turns out they're not necessarily, and I agree with this, they're waiting to get their coach before they make, before they make decisions with the roster, which makes a lot of sense because you're not going to bring in a guy like Barry Trotz if you're going to go young. You need to have a ready-to-win roster that's responsible defensively, can check, can forecheck, this and that, puck possession. If you're going to go a guy, Jim Montgomery, reports. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly where I saw. I think it was actually 32 Thoughts as well. If they go, let's say, a guy like Montgomery, they are able to go with a younger roster. They're able to construct a younger roster. I think Fletcher in the past was quoted as saying they're trying to put a roster together of talent 25 and under.
Yeah.
Right. And what that does is it allows you to, bring in a group of guys who are 23, 24, 25, who haven't necessarily hit their prime yet. Right. So you bring in a coach with a group of guys like that. The second, third year for that coach, these players should be hitting their prime. And the system, whatever the coach is preaching, is instilled in these guys. That sounds like that's what the plan is. So if they're going to do that, which I think is the more likely scenario, Jim Montgomery has grown on me a lot. Now he's been mentioned for the last 2-3 months, like out of nowhere to me a little bit. But as you read up on this guy and as more and more things kind of shape up, it's like I'm pretty sure Jim Montgomery is going to be the next Flyers head coach here.
It's funny you say that because he's been the guy that he's. I don't know if you can consider him the dark horse candidate because you see his name a lot, but it's like I feel like that's kind of the route they're going. And it's going to take some time. He's assistant coach right now in St. Louis. Obviously, they're in the second round, and I believe Game 4 is tonight of that series as the Avs are up 2-1 there. But as you see the reaction from some Flyers fans when Lane Lambert signs, as head coach in New York, and it's like, oh well, the Flyers haven't signed a coach yet. Like, oh my god, like this whole kind of like panic mode, and I'm kind of sitting there and I'm like, this isn't the way that I didn't think the Flyers were going to do this right away. If you remember when Scott Gordon was let go, right at the end of the season, the Flyers had a head coach 12 days later. That was when they hired Alain Vigneault. So it was a very quick process. It seemed like they kind of had their guy already before that. So I kind of figured this was going to take some time already. I do like Montgomery. I think that's perfect. I think a lot of what he did in Dallas was good. And it's a very similar kind of, if you look at that, believe it was the 2018-19 Stars team that he took to Game 7 of the second round. Very kind of similar roster to what the Flyers are attempting to build. It's a younger team mixed with some veterans. They had guys like obviously Sagan, Ben. They had a young Mira Heiskin and all them guys, right? So there's that too. But it doesn't. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Does a guy like Paul Maurice kind of come at you in any sort of way? Because I've talked with some people and I kind of see Maurice as, he's openly said he lost the room in Winnipeg. I don't know if that's necessarily something I want here because I think it was pretty obvious that Alain Vigneault lost the room here in Philadelphia. Is that, to you, does that seem as a hire that would kind of be for the name instead of the coaching style, or no?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I was never a Paul Maurice fan, and if you go back and look at his track record, don't you kind of wonder why? Like, why are people mentioning Paul Maurice, or why would he be a fit in Philadelphia? Right. I mean, things took a toll on him I get it, with the pandemic and stuff like that. As far as head coaches, he's younger than a lot of these other guys that we're hearing. He's only 55. Some of these other guys are pushing 60 and one. I'm not sure how much that matters.
Right.
But he's been a head coach in the NHL since 1995 with the Hartford Whalers when they were still in the league. But I'll tell you, like looking at his hockey DB without, having watched a lot of his teams play like in depth and whatnot.
Right.
Out of the playoffs more times than not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Paul Maurice was never a name for me that really did anything.
Right.
Compared to Jim Montgomery, I'm a huge believer in second chances. And, things happen for Jim Montgomery in Dallas, where he ended up having to, he resigned, right? For personal reasons.
Yeah, he had to step away from the game, yeah.
Yeah, he's been an assistant in St. Louis for a couple of years. They're a successful team. The Flyers know Berube. There's connections there that that can help the Flyers kind of get to know this guy and whatnot. He used to play for the Flyers back in the day for a season or two, a couple games. So there are connections. They should be familiar with the name, with the guy. And I also, and I'm not getting away from Paul Maurice here, but I am a little bit. I also heard that there's a connection between Johnny Gaudreau and Jim Montgomery. Is this true? Have you heard this?
I have not. It's actually the first you saying it now is the first I've heard.
So I should go back and look that up before I start spreading rumors. But I did hear, and I can't remember exactly who. I don't want to throw him under the bus in case it's wrong, but I heard that there was some form of connection between Jim Montgomery and Johnny Gaudreau. So I'm not sure if that's some kind of ploy to eventually, steal Johnny over here. I mean, he's got friends and stuff already, but
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, Paul Maurice for me doesn't really do too much. How about you?
That's the one where I say is it's more of the name instead of, because I just look back at him openly saying that he lost the room, and it's like, he's another guy that I throw into the mix of like the Claude Julien, John Tortorella. Like it's going to be, or I also should say Peter DeBoer now as well. It's going to be 2 years to where the Flyers were okay. If they were to sign one of those four coaches, it's going to be basically a year or two of their goals. They'll score more goals, they'll be better defensively, penalty kill will be better, power play might still be iffy, and then at some point they're going to go on like this weird kind of stretch. He'll end up losing the room and it'll just be AV all over again. That's kind of where I look at those four coaches, because it's just that a lot of this for me goes back to exit interviews. It's Fletcher saying that they want to be able to win now, but also plan for the future. And them basically saying, and pretty much, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter today, but they basically said like, they don't really know how they want to mold the roster. And I'm thinking to myself, you've signed 2 players already without knowing how you want to mold the team next year. You signed Nick Sealer and you signed Adam Getting to a ELC, which obviously those are 2 guys that, aren't going to play big roles on the team. Ginning could compete in training camp for a 7th D, and Sealer's most likely your 7th, 8th D probably. And the 2 of them might play a pairing down in Lehigh Valley. So there's that as well. I don't think that'll be the case, but it could. So that's kind of where I look at this. It's like, you signed a couple of players already, and also you can add the Ristolainen extension that Russ Cohen also mentioned on Twitter, which was a good point. You sign Risto, and it's like you don't even know where you want to go. So that's kind of where I'm a little confused, and that's why I like them taking their time. I don't want them to take as much time to where it's like they lose out on a candidate, but that's the hard truth that I guess we're going to have to face. It's like they're going to take as much time as possible to find the best candidate that they want. But getting off of the coaches, obviously the playoffs are going on right now. There's a lot of stuff going on. The series have been good. The games have been good. The Battle of Alberta has been absolutely bananas. There's been so many different things in that series. Has there been anything that's kind of caught your eye in any of the games so far?
I'll tell you what, man, it's Edmonton has really surprised me. I've liked Calgary back since October, November, and and when everyone's filling out their brackets and whatnot, I'm like, yeah, Calgary is going to stomp through the West. I wasn't surprised that they had trouble with Dallas. I think Dallas was kind of like their kryptonite, but man,
Michael Raffle too.
Yeah, Edmonton looks brand new after that. Even in that game 1, I mean, they scored a bunch of goals, but they gave up 9. What are the odds that happens again?
No, for sure. And it's funny. I've had a conversation with one of my buddies the other night. We were talking, and I was like, "Doesn't this remind you of the 2011-12 series against Pittsburgh with the Flyers?"
A bunch of people say this. Yeah.
So many people have said it, and I feel like, and it's funny, and it's so weird because the night we had that conversation, the next day it was like kind of all I saw on Twitter. It was like, "Oh, this series it just reminds me of that." I think there was like 23 goals in the first 2 games, and it's been very, very, very back and forth. There's been a little bit of game-to-game momentum for the Oilers, and they've played well, and the Flames cannot stop Connor McDavid. I mean, the guy is on a tear, and it's funny, if you listen to 32 Thoughts and Elliot Freeman, he says in every episode, he's like, he's going to single-handedly drag them deeper and deeper. And every time he says it, McDavid does it that same night, like if the game's on or if it's the next day. Like, it's just crazy. And it's funny that the latest episode, they were talking about playoff records, and the closest player to get 40 points in the playoffs in this era of recent years was 2009 of Getty Malkin at 36. And McDavid already has 23, and they're only 3 games into the second round. I mean, he could end the playoffs if they go to the Cup final, which with the way they're playing, I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? It's very possible, but with the way that they're playing, and if they were to go far, he could end the playoffs with 45 points. And the other question is if the Oilers say they lose in the conference final, could McDavid still win the Conn Smythe if they don't make the Cup final? It's never happened before. It's happened where players have got to the final and lost. Hextall and I think J.S. Jaguar with Anaheim in 2003. I believe they were the only 2 by my memory. But that would be absolutely insane if McDavid didn't even get to the Cup final, won the Conn Smythe.
I would say, yeah, he has to get there because he's not a goalie. Like, I don't know. I don't like the idea of it for some reason. Like, how can you be the MVP of the playoffs and you didn't even play the entire playoffs?
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you were the MVP of the first 2 rounds kind of thing. I don't know. I just, I get why. I mean, so you're giving the Conn Smythe. Is it the most valuable player of the playoffs, or is it the player who, helped this team succeed most kind of thing? And when I think of Conn Smythe, I think of, okay, well, which player on the winning team helped their team the most? Now, if you get a team where, where it's like a team effort kind of thing, and you're talking about a Brodeur or who else did you say there?
Jaguar.
And they're willing their team to like a game 7 loss or something like that. Then I get it. But I don't like that idea.
Right. And again, because by rule, it's the Conn Smythe Trophy is an annual award given to quote unquote to the most valuable player for his team in the playoffs. So, and it's selected by the Professional Hockey Writers Association at the conclusion of the last game of the Cup final. But one thing I will argue with that too is like there's a certain feeling I get when I watch a certain player in the Cup final absolutely dominate. And in recent years, it was Vasilevsky, it was Victor Hedman, like Ryan McDonough played so well for Tampa Bay that he was even almost could have gotten it as well. That's kind of what I love is seeing a certain player. You always get that like that storyline, and the guy just plays so well. And I think if that were the case, it would kind of take away a little bit of it. But obviously, another thing with the playoffs that's kind of been a controversy is the Blues Avalanche Game 3. The way that Bennington gets hurt from Kadri, how did you see that whole thing?
So I didn't see anything wrong with that. I saw more wrong with what Milan Lucic did last night. I didn't even necessarily. So here's my thing, and I don't know how this is going to make me look.
Right.
I'm a huge believer in, hey, if another team's goalie is shutting you down and you want to win this series, win this game, you have to find a way to throw him off.
Yeah.
Now, is that necessarily running him over and taking him out of the series? No, I'm not talking about that. Just shake his focus, get him rattled a little bit, get him thinking about something other than stopping the puck. And so what Lucic did, even though I don't necessarily have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I thought it
did look like he stopped too.
Yeah. I thought it was much worse than what Kadri did. I think Lucic had intent. I think Kadri was somewhat redirected. Now, that's not me saying that.
I think Kadri was more going for the puck.
Yeah. I'm not going to assume anything, because if I'm Kadri and I get redirected into the other team's goalie, am I going to try to stop? Or it's like, hey, you pretty much threw me into your goalie, so I'm going to go in full force kind of thing. But again, I don't think he had any intent to injure Binnington. I don't think he had any intent to collide with him. And I find it really, I don't want to go down that road, but I think it's really, I haven't really been on Twitter today, but all I saw was Kadri this, Kadri that yesterday. I haven't seen anything about Milan Lucic today, which is very odd to me.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I've seen it more on Instagram because I do follow a couple Oilers pages and I've seen some stuff about it. On Twitter, it's not been as much, I think, and I did see that he isn't facing any suspension or anything like that. I think that came out this morning. I don't know if there were any fines from any of the scrums after the fact, but I don't believe so. But yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think the whole thing is it's tough because when you're Kadri, you have that reputation. And then when you see the TNT interview when he says that Bennington threw the water bottle at him, if that's reversed and that's Bennington in the interview when Kadri throws the water bottle and that gets leaked or whatever, and somebody says that it was him, Kadri is like Twitter would absolutely blow up if that was Kadri because of his reputation. And
sure, because you have that reputation, and right. That's where that comes in. But like in an example, like with what happened with him running into Binnington, in my opinion, that's just a play that happens in hockey sometimes.
Oh, so yeah, for sure.
You have to set the reputation stuff aside. It's when he does something really stupid or intentional. It's different
when the puck is in the area.
Right. If he does something intent, like if he was the guy to throw the water bottle, then it's kind of like, man, this guy really is a jerk, Like, what should we do? And Binnington's no saint, right? By the way, but so I was surprised that we didn't hear more about that. Not that I'm saying a guy should be suspended or fined for throwing a water bottle.
Like Bennington's probably the cockiest goalie in the league.
Which, the Flyers had a guy like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's I don't mind it. A lot of people don't like it, but I'm okay with it. Yeah. It's fun.
No, for sure. And that's the thing. That's the best part of the playoffs. Getting back to the Flyers, there's been some talk of and I've seen it a lot, and it's not even just in the off season. I've seen this even throughout the year because obviously, as everybody knows, the Flyers were injured this year. Sean Couturier didn't play much, and I've seen this whole kind of thing, and I've actually had this argument with my father a good amount, that he. It's funny that my dad says this, and I know, and I'm going to say this because I know he's watching this. He says that Coots is like China, and it's like he's always injured and this whole kind of thing, right? So and when he said that, I went back and I looked at the amount of games that Coots has played and missed. And the last 5 seasons from 2017-18 to when he was injured in the playoffs by his own teammate, and then still almost, single-handedly beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, he's only missed from 2017-18 until 2021-22. He's played 307 of 371 possible games, and that's with COVID and everything else.
And most of those probably came this year.
Most of them were this year, yes. He only played 29 games out of a possible 82 this year. So in recent years, he's been injured, and obviously the recent injury is this year, but Coots is really not that injured. If he's injured, it's like a small little tweak here and there. To me, the most like the biggest injury that I remember is the playoffs when it was, I believe he tore his MCL with that collision with Gudas at practice. But there's that, and then obviously he did get surgery on his back and everything. But there's this talk of Couturier and him not being a 1C. And I'm just gonna say flat out, like, I completely disagree with it. Like, Coots, to me, first of all, they were better this year with Couturier on the ice. You could see it. You could tell he was playing hurt, but they were playing better. And this was before everything and before the first 10-game losing streak. When they lost Couturier full time, you could see it was basically like they lost Couturier. You could see there was a whole level of their game, and then when they lost Giroux, it was a completely different level of their game where it was like they have all the stars are gone, And to me, Couturier, he's a good play driver, and to me that's one of the biggest areas that they've don't have many players in after losing different guys to trades, but that's a different conversation. He's a good play driver, good on penalty kill. I think a lot of people forget that this guy just won the Selke 2 years ago. Like, he is still a very good elite. He's good offensively. I mean, again, like, I really don't have to say much. Like, he's Sean Couturier. Like, that's kind of how I see it. Do you still think Sean Couturier is a 1C? Because I think there are people out there that don't think he is, and I think the reason for that is just I think everything has kind of spiraled, and I think it's kind of obvious to when you kind of just like start nitpicking at different areas. And one thing I will agree with though is I do think the Flyers need another center, but that's obviously a different topic. But as for Couturier, Jim, how would you assess Couturier kind of going into next year?
So I'll ask it like this: when you think of Ryan O'Reilly, do you think of number one center?
Yeah.
Okay. Me too. And Sean Couturier's offensive numbers are better than Ryan O'Reilly's. So, I think as Flyers fans, and we did the same thing with Giroux, probably the same thing with Voracek. We watch these guys play every day.
Yeah.
And we think like we're used to it. We're used to what they're doing. Like, Sean Couturier is a great player. He plays the game the right way. Like Selke Trophy winners don't grow on trees over here. I'm not saying we don't appreciate Sean Couturier, right? Because when I think number one center, I think offensive, dynamo. That's what I normally think of. Sean Couturier, he's not an offensive dynamo. He's more Patrice Bergeron, more Ryan O'Reilly, Elias Lindholm. I don't want to compare him so much to Barkov because I think Barkov is maybe more skilled than all those players offensively. But
he's unbelievably skilled.
I mean, Sean Couturier, you have to. This is what we do, I think, as well. We have to appreciate Couturier for the player that he is, not for the player that he's not. You know what I mean? Because you can very much overlook all the positive things that he does for a team.
Right.
What I'm going to be most interested to see is, can he put up almost point per game numbers next season without a Claude Giroux?
If he has a Johnny Gaudreau, I think so.
Yes, I would agree 100%. And that's why I think he's my guy. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But if you want the same production from Couturier, if you want to get, better production from, I don't know who it's going to be, Atkinson, Farabee, Konechny, you name it. You need a guy that can distribute the puck as well as put the puck. Gaudreau could be a better scorer than Claude Giroux as well. Let's not forget that.
Mhm. No, I mean, look, it's kind of similar to my next topic was, trading Carter Hart, and as crazy as it sounds, it's like, first of all, I think it's absolutely bananas, but we've seen, I've seen it on Twitter, like, Hartford Drysdale. And I'm like, yeah, like, sure, the offense would be better. They'd have a 100-point player on their team, but they would have a glaring hole in net. So they would probably still be worse. I mean, again, like they'd score more, but that's about it. But again, if we're going back to molding this roster and the whole thing with the coach too, it's like they need to get the right players in here that fit with this coach. It's not like you can have just, a coach come in. Like I'd rather it be, because it was different the last time. And if this makes sense, it's like we kind of had the roster already together and then they made a couple moves and it was like then the coach was here. But now it's like we kind of already have some of the roster and then we have to bring in the coach. So it's kind of backwards a little bit. And when you bring in, if you bring in a star player, say it's Goudreau, because I do think the Flyers will pursue him, and I think they might be able to get him. And it's so weird to say, and I hate saying it like this way, but like if Calgary were to lose in this round, I think that could benefit the Flyers more because he hasn't had much success in Calgary playoff wise. But then again, I kind of think to myself, like, why would he want to leave Calgary? Goudreau, because it's like,
Hold up there.
yeah, that's true. And he has always talked about, he does want to play here.
Yeah.
He's always said it. And I just don't know if it's time for him yet. The other area of this too is if they don't get Goudreau, and I personally do believe that they need a second line center. I think they need a legit play driving elite center that isn't as much of a playmaker, can score, help on the power play. My ideal option was Tomas Hertl, but obviously he re-signed in San Jose. You have Forsberg. Obviously, he's a winger, so it's a little bit different. Are there any other guys for you that are kind of like, yeah, I want the Flyers to pursue him, and do any of them, have an offer sheet and
Let me see if
or
I can bring up my list here.
yeah,
So I have more cheaper names here. Not
mhm,
anybody that's going to get anyone excited, but
yeah,
I would love them to acquire a center as well.
yeah,
So I still see Couturier and Hayes as 1-2. I don't think Hayes looked terrible as the regular season rolled on.
mhm.
So
See, it's funny you say that because I see Couturier and Hayes as 1-3.
yeah, and a lot of people do, and they're probably better off if that ends
Yeah,
up happening.
yeah,
Um,
and that's nothing against Hayes. That's nothing
no,
against Hayes at all. I thought he was fantastic in the end of the year.
yeah, I would love for Hayes to end up being the third center because that would mean they have somebody better there. So here's my short list of targets here, and in no specific order, but these are all guys that were in the playoffs that can fill spots for the Flyers. Sort of like, you know how everyone picked apart Tampa Bay.
Yeah,
Calgary took somebody, New York took somebody, Seattle took somebody. You know what I mean? So what you're doing is you're now building a roster with guys with playoff experience, role
mhm,
playing guys type thing. So,
yeah,
a lot of people aren't going to like this name, I don't think, but a guy like Vinny Trocheck, depending on what kind of
oh, I love
deal,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
what kind of deal he gets, kind of thing, second
mhm,
or third line guy. A PK, or he can also play on the power play. You can do whatever you need, really. He's like very good player, hardworking guy. Is he a guy that's going to make people go, oh my God, yeah, like this is
yeah,
a play, this is a play driving star. Like this is
right.
exactly what the Flyers need. No, people aren't going to get excited over. I mean, guys like me and you might,
You're right.
because I'm a huge Trocheck fan. But
I love Trocheck. My
yeah,
only question against it is would he leave Carolina?
uh,
That's the one thing is,
that is the thing.
yeah, and that's kind of why it's to me. I think it's tougher to look at playoff teams and look at the guys like that because it's like they're having so much success. Why would they leave? And I'm not saying that because the Flyers are struggling. Like I don't always agree with the why would he come to Philadelphia thing because it's like I think there's some good things and I think there's some bad things. I don't necessarily think it's absolutely putrid to play here,
Mhm.
and some people might think that way, but that's just not how I see it. Um, it's funny, I've always kind of looked at the way that the Flyers offseason is they can go out and get one or two legit star guys, and it doesn't even have to be like this big name. If they were to go out and get Gaudreau, and if they go out and they get another Atkinson type scorer, they will be much better. If you can get another guy that goes out and gets on an average of like 20 goals, like I seriously see them offer sheeting Kevin Fiala with Minnesota. They're in a cap crunch. Chuck knows him, I believe. Or no, excuse me. I almost said Chuck drafted him, but I forgot he was not drafted by the Wild. So that's kind of a moot point. My bad. But again, I think Fiala would be perfect. And they need, again, like I think they need legit talent. And I'm not saying they don't have talent, but they just need some more of it up front in their top six.
All right.
Because I think they have legit guys here who can play. You know, if Tippett gets a shooting coach, he could put up at least 50 points. I think Frost takes a huge jump next year. And Jim, as you know, I'm very high on Frost. Like, I think they have some moldings of putting together a good roster. I just don't know if A, they'll be able to get the right pieces around the guys they have now, and B, will they be able to compete with a 100-point Eastern Conference division where every team made the playoffs had to have at least 100 points or more. Those are my two questions.
Here's where the coach, what coach they bring in comes in and matters. Because let's say it is Trotz. Is Frost even on the roster next season? He's not a Trotz kind of guy. He's a younger kid. He's more, his defensive game's not really there. Is he a guy they want to play around with for another year? Do you know what I mean? So if it's Trotz, so here's another thing that we have to consider. You hit the nail on the head when you said they need a play driving center. The Flyers are very slow down the middle.
They really are.
Right. So
it's kind of like guys are getting in quicksand.
Right. So a guy like Trotz could help with that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, maybe a guy like Trotz, for an example, I'm just using his name. A guy like Trocheck would make sense. Older guy, can play the defensive style type thing. Or let's say they go Montgomery. Then you can take your time and let's see what we have with Frost. Let's see if we can get Tippett going here, kind of thing. And let's see if we can, put some, a younger team together, sprinkled in with vets and let's see. So here's another thing, a thought that I had today. If they do go Montgomery, don't you feel like Chuck's got just a little bit more job security because they're going to give it a little bit more time to play out to see if it works?
I think so.
Whereas if they go Trotz and things don't work out quick, Chuck's gone.
Well, that's kind of how I see Tortorella too. Like if it doesn't work, it's like, okay, scratch it. It's like throw it all in the garbage. Let's just redo it. And then that's where I think it's like, all right, we're going to rebuild now.
Yeah.
That's where I think that's when that comes in. But, it's funny you say that because I've thought about that too. Like, and it's so weird. Like I sit there and I was like, what if all of this works out? And I had that thought last night. I'm like, what if all of this stuff just works out and say they end up going to like the Eastern Conference Finals? What if it's actually like, and again, people mention this from 2020-21 going into this season of how 06-07 was going into 07-08, where it was like they went out, got a couple names, and then, obviously they get Tiemann, they get Hartnell, they get Briere. They go out and then they lose in the Eastern Conference Final to the Penguins, who I believe ended up winning were the runner-up in the Cup final that year. But again, it's like if this were to work out, and if it was Montgomery, I really hope they have a legit coach that understands the players they have here, because I do think the Alain Vigneault and the staff didn't really understand a good amount of the players here. And as weird as that sounds, but it's like, if you seriously think about it, like Patrick had absolutely no idea how to play Nolan Patrick. Oscar Lindblom, AV had no idea how to play Lindblom, and also Mike Yeo really didn't do that much well either, because Lindblom was actually ended up being on the fourth line for most parts of the year, then towards the end of it. As for Shane Gostisbehere, I mean, they had no idea how to play Gostisbehere for majority of the year, of the 2019-20 season, playing third pair. He would be all over the power play. Like they just couldn't do that. If they can get a guy in here, and that's why I really like Montgomery. I also like Tocchet, because Tocchet, I think, And I talked with former Flyer Zach Ronaldo about this, that Tocchet is a guy that if he understands you, they play for him. And that was how Zach was with Ronaldo. And his ice time actually went up. If you go and you look at Ronaldo's stats, the year before, I believe it was in Boston, he only played around 8 minutes. Arizona, he was playing close to 12. So he had trust from that coach there. I know it's a one player, it's a different situation, but Tocchet's one of them guys where it's like, I know the Stars like him. We've kind of heard that because when they almost fired Bonus in the, I think it was around the All-Star break, they Tocchet almost went in, but they couldn't agree on term. So there's that as well. But I do like the Montgomery. I do like Tocchet because, again, I think those are two guys that really do help and I think the whole player development thing too. That's obviously it's been an issue because we struggled to develop players and develop our prospects. Because I do think the Flyers are good at drafting. It's just developing the guy is the problem.
Right, and we saw the recent hire of Kapanen to help with scouting, and who's the other kid? It was his last name was Shero, right? He's going to help with player development.
Yeah, that's Fred Shero's grandson.
There you go. So, 2 moves, recognizable names. Loved Kapanen. A lot of the older Flyer fans remember Shero and like him. So, they're trying. I said this during the season too. Like, it's all going to depend on the coach,
right?
But the thing is, sure. The more days go by, the NHL draft is approaching,
right?
So I would think that you want to have your coach sooner, that he can become familiar with the roster, become familiar with, what the team needs, what the GM wants to do, kind of thing. So the quicker everyone's on the same page, the faster they can start to build and move forward. So if I have a concern right now, that's it, that the clock is ticking. So, when they say they want to be thorough and take their time, and I'm taking it as they want to interview everybody so they can make sure they make the right choice. That's fine. But there better not be a day that goes by where you're not interviewing somebody. Do you know what I mean? Like they got to really, maybe even do 2 at a time here, because they got to get going. There's a lot of names available. I get it. Pick the right one. I'm on that. I'm on that side of the fence. But let's get going.
No, for sure, because we're close to like 6 weeks away from the draft. You're probably gonna have a coach before the draft. Like it's gonna have to be coming soon.
Yeah.
Twitter questions. I did have a couple of those that I did want to mention before we hop off here. Who do you think this one right here? There's actually a couple here. This one comes from Dank Seltzer on Twitter. Who are your favorite prospects in the upcoming draft? So that's that. I kind of take that as who would you want the Flyers to pick at 5? Jim, anybody? Who do you like?
Maybe you should go first.
If I'm being honest, I really like Joakim Campbell. I know we've talked about him before. I like Campbell a lot. Like outside of Forrester and Connor McLennan, who they have until June 1st to sign his ELC, which that should be happening soon. They don't have many shooters, and I do. It's funny because now Amadeo, Jim's not a big prospect guy.
Wait till you're going to lose viewers when I give my response here.
It's okay. But no, again, I like Campbell a lot. If Slavkovsky were to fall, don't think it's going to happen. I really like him. And it could, because, we've seen both defensemen, Nemec and Jiricek, kind of go up and go down. Outside of 1 and 2, it's a crapshoot. Like nobody knows. And I think nobody's going to know until draft day. That's it. So.
See, that's kind of my issue, right? Like, so this is gonna sound dumb to a lot of people, but GMs who are drafting after the Flyers have already come out and said, "Hey, we're open to moving our pick."
So is New Jersey, who's at 2.
They're still shopping it, which I think is smart. This draft is not. It's not like last year's draft. It's not like next year's draft. I think it's top heavy in the sense that if you want a guy, you need to be picking top 3 or 4. And unfortunately, the Flyers just missed out, right? They're at pick 5. I'm sure, I like the way Chuck has drafted. I think he's drafted some pretty good players. We're seeing it already in guys like Cam York. Tyson Forrester, I think he nailed that pick. Unfortunately, sat out a lot of this year. Zay Wisdom is a guy I like. Emil Andre, another player I really like.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Chuck's his drafting's fine, or should I say Flair? Flair's doing a nice job, right? However, and this it still depends on who the coach is, right? If you get a Trotz, do you trade the pick? Yeah. I would consider it. I don't think you necessarily have to use it.
Right.
If you get a guy like Montgomery, go ahead, use it. Who would I like to see them use it on? I can't sit here and say that I've watched a lot of these kids play. I know that Wright is most likely going to go number one. I know a lot of Flyers fans love Slavkovsky. I've seen people compare him to Rantanen, but again, haven't really watched him play. And then they have the two right-handed defense, which the Flyers need.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Wyatt Wiley, they don't have a legit NHL option, and I don't even know if Wiley's an option.
Yeah, so there you go. They got two guys there in Nimick. Is that how you said his name?
Nimick and Jiricek, yeah.
And Jiricek, yeah. The other guy that I was interested in is Savoie, only because he was playing with McLennan this season, right?
Yep.
So, let's see what they got there. I think he's a smaller kid, right? But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. The Flyers are right on the cusp at 5, and that's kind of where I'm like, if you're at 5 or 6, 7, maybe think about moving the pick. Why not? Let's have fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's the thing. The season's been so bad where it's like just have fun at this point. So
hey, even if they're trading down, right? Because if let's say the players between 5 and 10,
if they were to trade down and get a second, I'd be fine.
Yeah, let's say the players between 5 and 10 are all similar in skill, or you want to get a specific position or something like that. I'm fine. Trade down if you want to get more picks. That's fine, but don't just use the pick on a guy because you're picking 5th. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I do think that they will go best player available, and they should, because they haven't really done that, and we've seen that with York. And I can't even tell you I think the last time they probably did that was JVR. Maybe Patrick, if you want to consider that, but I don't know. But if they were to go best player available, again, it depends. Like if Nemick is there, I think Jiricek could also be there. I've seen Jiricek could go top 3. Savoie, like there's so many different options.
Right, you can mix and match. That's the thing. And that kind of pushes me the other way to trade back if you can, because it's a mismatch. Like if you're picking 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all these players are going all over the place in all these mocks. So it's like, well, there's no clear cut number 2. That means there's no clear cut number 3. There's no clear cut number 4.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, trade back and get whoever falls to you. That's my opinion. But I also get, if you have the opportunity to take the best player available, you should absolutely do that.
For sure. Yeah, no, and the Flyers have a lot of different questions coming up, and as I said, like 6 weeks till the draft, there's a lot of different things. But again, Jim, thanks for doing this. Really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
If there is anything that you want to mention that you guys are doing soon, or where people can follow you,
of course, yeah. So obviously, I'm on Twitter at JimMikeHW. If you want to give our podcast account a follow as well, it's at FlyersHW. We'll be doing a live show tonight on YouTube. We have a guest from Montreal Hockey Now. Marco D'Amico is going to come on to not only educate our listeners, but educate me on prospects. This way, next time me and you hang out, we can talk prospects, and I'll be able to give you a better answer on top 5 for the Flyers. So, we're excited for that, and that's pretty much all we have going on this week.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. And again, I also put obviously all the stuff, as I said, like usual, in the videos that normally SeatGeek, if you want to check out that, you get $20 off if you use code FLYERSAMania. That's all capital letters. And that just to clarify, that doesn't just work for Flyers games. It works for anything. So if it's concerts or even Phillies games, I think you can do that as well.
That's pretty sick. I could have used that last weekend.
Yeah, there you go.
I know.
Yeah, seriously. I think it's once you do it, it's $20 off the whole order. So it doesn't matter if you get 2 tickets, 4 tickets, whatever. It's still
it knocks off the fee at least there.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's great. But again, also merchandise that is in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you all again soon.